Joining us now via the phone is presidential candidate Congressman Ron Paul, Republican from Texas. And Representative Paul, thanks so much for being here on Newsmax TV.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Well, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell proposed giving the president the power to unilaterally raise the debt ceiling, adding that the consequences of failing to raise the debt ceiling are too great. Is McConnell capitulating in the debt debate, or is his plan a brilliant one?
It's not a brilliant one, and we are capitulating. Over the years, I have fought so often the Congress reneging on their responsibilities and delivering it to the executive branch, whether it has to do with war powers or trade problems, international trade. But here it is now on the debt. No, I think it's terrible. It should be the Congress's responsibility, not giving this authority to the president to raise the debt limit.
Now, what are you hearing on Capitol Hill? Is there any chance that McConnell's idea could actually gain traction, and how do you see this debate playing out?
Well, so far, everybody I've talked to have been annoyed by it, and those are mostly the conservatives, so I don't know how many others are sympathetic to this, but I don't think it's going to work. I do think, though, that somehow or another they probably will raise the debt limit by making some promises that people will, fall in a trap to believing. But so far, they still have a lot of work to do.
Now, you would vote against McConnell's proposal, correct?
Oh, against his proposal and any effort to raise the debt limit, because I think that that's been our problem. We just permit the Congress to continue to spend and never do what they have to do, and that is cut back.
Now, in your view, what's the solution?
Well, the solution is quit spending, and of course, I have a list of priorities, but I think getting everybody to agree to those might be difficult, so I think it should be across-the-board cut. That's what you would have to do if it was your own household account. But to pretend it's not much of a problem and you just raise the debt limit, you keep spending and keep running up the debt, eventually it's going to end very badly, and that is with a dollar crisis. And I'm afraid we're going to end up with that rather than coming to our senses and cutting back because politically it's so difficult. But I would cut the spending.
Now, President Obama is threatening to hold seniors' Social Security checks hostage. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I think that, again, is a scare tactic. I think the cash flow and Social Security, what they have on hand, can last, quite a while, and not years and years, but probably 18 months or so, some of the figures that I've seen. So that's just a scare tactic. When they have government close downs or a threat of a close down because we don't pass the budget, the first thing they do is they prevent people from going up on the Washington Monument, so everybody sees that somebody has to suffer, and the people who come to Washington will see this. I think that's a little bit of that stuff with Social Security. They're not going to stop sending the checks out, and they have the money to do it without even bending the rules. The cash is there to take care of them for a good many months.
Now, voters in the last election sent Washington the message to control spending if the debt limit is raised, if the GOP reaches some kind of compromise that involves mild cuts instead of significant ones, and maybe a tax increase. What's the fallout going to be for Republicans in the next election?
Well, if it involves tax increases, it would be very, very bad for the Republicans and those who supported it. It might not be quite as bad if they raise the debt limit and at least assume or take it on faith that there will be some serious cuts. It wouldn't be quite as bad, but regardless, I wouldn't vote for it. But I think it depends a lot on the economy, and since the economy is getting weaker, probably no matter what we do, the people are going to be pretty upset. And politics is very in flux today. That it was only a few years ago that the Republicans were losing drastically, then all of a sudden the Democrats are losing because the problems are so difficult.
Now, lawmakers are making political hay while Americans are suffering through this lagging economy. Are voters right to feel frustrated?
Absolutely, but they should put it in perspective because right now all that we're dealing with in Washington is the blame game. Who's at fault? Is it all Obama's fault, or is it something Republicans did in the past? And I think it's what Republicans and Democrats and many, many administrations have done for a good many years, accepting the principles of central economic planning and a monetary system that encourages this type of behavior, as well as a foreign policy that gets us involved in these many wars constantly, and they seem to never end. So that's what the real problem is. And until we change that attitude, I don't see how we can get a handle on what's happening.
Okay, let's talk about this morning. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke said that the Fed stands ready to respond with more stimulus if needed. What's your reaction to that?
Same old. I mean, it's the same thing. That's his only tool. In a weak economy, you print money, you stimulate, you run up debt, you try to get people to spend money, which is exactly opposite of what we need. A consumer couldn't do that. If a person, was deeply in debt, you don't tell them to go out and get another credit card and don't work hard. You tell them to quit spending, no more credit, and get an extra job and pay off your debt. So, and he's saying that, yes, he still has room. He can print money, and he will. That's part of his whole entire philosophy. But the whole thing is there's a limit to that, and the limit isn't so much a legal limit as it is a market limit, because eventually printing all this money will get people to quit buying our debt, and they're buying less of it now. We don't have as much use of the dollar as a reserve currency, and eventually they'll reject the dollar at the rate we're going.
Now, this week you announced that you would not seek a 13th term in Congress next year and will concentrate instead on running for president. And according to published reports, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke smiled when he heard that you won't run for re-election. Will you miss Ben Bernanke?
Well, not really, but I don't see so much of this in personal terms, and we addressed that today a little bit in the banking committee, and that subject came up and kidded a bit about it. But no, I'm interested in monetary policy, but I think it's the policy, and I actually made a point today, or tried to, that it's the overall policy of central economic planning, which Congress and the Fed participates in. That's the real problem. So it's not just changing this Federal Reserve Board chairman wouldn't do much good. Just changing Congress won't do much good unless you get people who actually understand the Constitution.
Last question, real quickly, Representative Paul. Talk to us about what brought you to the decision to not seek a 13th term.
Well, one of the major reasons was that I didn't want to run for two offices at one time. I didn't want two campaigns. I did that before, and I think it deserves some criticism. So I've just decided I'm going to concentrate, in the presidential race. The campaign is going very well, so much better than it did 4 years ago, and the conditions are so different, and that's one of the reasons people are listening more to this non-interventionist foreign policy. They're listening to my views on the Federal Reserve, as well as the reason why we must balance the budget. But it's also, I'm also at a point where I'm not that anxious. If I don't win this national election, I'm not that anxious to stay in the Congress right at this moment.
All right, GOP presidential candidate Congressman Ron Paul, it's always great to have you with us here on Newsmax TV, and good luck with the campaign.
Thank you.